Hello, welcome to my video presentation. My name is Murmis. I'm advisor to the Department of Bioenergy of the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries of Argentina. Today, I would like to talk to you about Argentina's bioeconomy and reflect upon the meaning of sustainability within the bioeconomy. Argentina has taken important steps towards the promotion of the bioeconomy. First, it has institutionalized it into a secretariat within the Ministry of Agriculture, where I work. Through the ministry, it has entered into interinstitutional agreements with other countries, such as Germany, international institutions, and local institutions, and created an interministerial agreement where several ministries work together into a bioeconomy strategy. Through these activities, databases and information have resulted, and education and capacity building. Important milestones in the road towards bioeconomy have been the law for the promotion of biofuel production and use, mandates for biofuels, biofuel blends were introduced. In 2012, the Pro-Biomassa project was launched. It aimed to increase production of thermal energy and power derived from biomass. And in 2015, the Renewable Energy Promotion Law was passed, setting a target of 20% share of renewable energy sources in the national power grid by 2025. The bioeconomy is an important actor in the Argentine economy already. It has been estimated that it accounts for 16% of GDP. It is an important employer, and interestingly, added value per worker bioeconomic activities is significantly higher than the national average. Bioeconomic products also account for 67% of total exports. What is our vision into the future? Our vision for the bioeconomy is for it to provide economic and social development within a sustainable path. We know that the bioeconomy can be instrumental in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in the sustainable use of resources, in reducing pollution, and in helping maintain ecosystem services and ecological integrity. Therefore, the bioeconomy can be a valuable, even critical component of a low-emission sustainable development strategy. But it is not sustainable by definition. Sustainability has to be built in, designed in to a bioeconomy strategy or activity. And this is very important because today economic strategies are very popular and are being considered possibly throughout the world. And the reason for this is that they can be a means to economic and social development while maintaining sustainability and avoiding the pitfalls of our linear fossil fuel, unsustainable path. So, if we remove sustainability from the bioeconomy can lose its appeal. But the power of the bioeconomy, the beauty of it, is in its ability to emulate nature. The key is that the biomass that is harvested can be replaced by the growth of new biomass in the same amount. Further, if that biomass is produced and harvested by intensifying systems, we can avoid advancing onto natural systems. So what we're saying is that to be sustainable, the bioeconomy needs to be circular, such as nature, which is circular. What do we mean by circular? We mean that production, consumption, and trade are designed to minimize the net extraction of resources, which in the case of bioresources should be zero, the net extraction. And what is extracted is used, reduced, repaired, and recycled into the system in as close to loop as possible, if possible into the same system or nearby systems. We also aim to keeping the value of materials as high as possible as long as possible, even increasing or upcycling the value of materials so we keep them away from becoming waste. An analogy to this is the power of the bioeconomy for climate change. The key here is that the CO2 emitted when a bioproduct is used is reabsorbed when more biomass grows. Of course, we have to analyze the whole life cycle of our products to calculate the total emissions. It is not only important to reduce emissions, but it is very important to be able to prove it. Because climate change is here to stay, we're going to have to deal with climate change and with our efforts, collective international efforts to control climate change. And for this reason, in our trade and our trade agreements, financing agreements, international accords, the issue of climate change and the need to prove that we're working on emissions reductions will remain there. So it is strategically important for our countries, especially developing countries, to invest in knowledge, in studying systems, logistic systems, and our own emissions factors for this purpose, to be familiar and capable in accepted methodologies for calculating emissions, and to do so with reputable, respected institutions, and to have studies that are independent. This does not mean that interest groups and industry cannot have their own studies or that government cannot collaborate with them, but governments should also aim to have independent studies that are done by institutions that are not associated with interest groups, so that we maintain credibility in our international negotiations. So if I have not convinced you till now that we need to build in sustainability into a bioeconomy strategy, let's review where we are and how we got here. Human beings have been on Earth for at least 300,000 years. But we reached our first billion in 1804. We reached a second billion well into the 20th century, I believe 1927. But during that century, we added 4 billion people more. Growth of population in the 20th century was by a factor of 3.7. Total material extraction grew more than proportionally by a factor of 8. But if we look at certain sectors in particular, we see that the stress on Earth, natural systems, significantly increased during this great acceleration of the 20th century. Annual extraction of construction materials grew by a factor of 34, ores and minerals by a factor of 27, fossil fuels by 12, biomass by a moderate 3.6 by comparison. What was the effect? The result was that of 9 planetary boundaries, boundaries that keep human systems healthy and thriving on Earth. Of 9 planetary boundaries defined by the Stockholm Environmental Institute, 4 were trespassed, were exceeded. 2 of those are today in the high risk zone beyond uncertainty. Those are biodiversity and biochemical flows represented by phosphorus and nitrogen cycles. The other 2, which are in the zone of increasing risk, having passed the limit, are climate change and land system change. And interestingly, all 4 of those boundaries are associated with food systems and biomass production systems. That is where we are. And where are we going? Within this century, it is expected that by 2050, we will be nearing 10 billion people on Earth. In the next 30 years, 2 billion people will be added, when that took 300,000 years in the past. There will also be significant changes in consumption patterns as people move into the middle class, and rightly so. People who move up into the middle class want to consume and live better, but that means further stress on resources in the current path we're in. That means that despite the fact that 2 billion people will be added, and that is a 25% increase, the increase in the demand for water will be 30%, of food 60%, of energy 50%, of water in agriculture another 60%. And all within the context of climate change, where climate models are becoming more and more accurate and more reliable, and we know that we are already experiencing climate change. But to avoid the catastrophic consequences of climate change, we need to not exceed a 2-degree increase in global average temperatures. Yet, we're on the path to 3 degrees, and even with our pledges and targets through our national determined contributions, we're on the road to 2.4 degrees. Additionally, the IPCC has recommended that we aim for a target of 1.5 degrees. And if we continue on the road we're on, it's likely to be exceeded, is projected to be exceeded between 2030 and 2050. So it may be in the next 9 years. So within that context, we need to develop. We need a sustainable development trajectory. What we have now here before us is the Human Development Index on the horizontal axis and the Ecological Footprint Index in the vertical axis. The dots are countries, and what we see is that as countries have progressed in human development, they have also increased their ecological footprint. The countries that are in the lower right-hand side rectangle are the countries that are living within good, high human development and within planetary boundaries. That is, in fact, 0 countries. So what we hope is that the bioeconomy will be a means to move countries into that rectangle. The countries that are to the left of the very high human development line cannot follow the path of developed countries today. It is physically impossible. So collectively, we must find a way to change our relationship with the earth, and hopefully the bioeconomy will be a way to move all those dots into the lower right-hand side square. So, to end, hopefully many changes will accompany that process. We have them on this cartoon listed on the screen, and I hope to leave you with a smile. Thank you.
My name is Nella Canales, and I am a research fellow with the Stockholm Environment Institute, SEI, based in Stockholm, Sweden. Today, I will be presenting governance of the bioeconomy, common visions in the Colombian context, as part of the BBEST-Biofuture virtual conference. This presentation will have 3 parts. In the first one, I will explain why we talk about common visions for the bioeconomy and what do I mean by this. And then I will proceed to explain our experience in discussing bioeconomy visions in Colombia, both from a national and a subnational perspective. So why are common visions important for bioeconomy governance? Well, we know that there is not a clear definition of what bioeconomy is, whereas there have been efforts in defining what is bioeconomy, what is included within bioeconomy, what sustainable bioeconomy means. In practice, policy documents define bioeconomy differently depending on the context of specific places or specific regions or specific sectors. Moreover, definitions on what bioeconomy is or what bioeconomy is expected to achieve can vary greatly within these countries and regions depending on who you ask, who are these people, what their values are, what are the interests to achieve with bioeconomy. For analyzing these visions, we used a publication led by Marcus Bugge, who in 2016 identified three ideal visions of the bioeconomy based on the existing literature at the time, which was predominantly coming from natural sciences and engineering. These visions were biotechnology, bioresources, and bioecology. The authors define these three visions through four key features or characteristics. Aims and objectives, and these will go from economic growth and job creation and sustainability on the other side, on the bioecology vision. Value creation, which fluctuated between application of biotechnologies and territorial identity. Innovation drivers and mediators, that it was a linear model for the biotechnology vision, and it was more of a transdisciplinary approach in the bioecology vision. And finally, spatial focus, which was considering a very global market in the biotechnology vision, whereas in the bioresources and bioecology visions, it was more focused on rural and peripheral areas. We wanted to identify how these Bugge visions could be linked to the bioeconomy in different parts of the world, and how these visions vary. And this was important because different visions have different implications for sustainability and governance. So we considered the participatory backcasting approach, which is an approach well known for system transitions, such as bioeconomy. This approach was applied in practice through workshops where we discuss with different stakeholders their visions of sustainable bioeconomy and what does that meant for them within their own contexts. The participatory approach included the identification of the four Bugge key features of a bioeconomy vision, and we positioned the discussion in the year 2050. Once a common vision was identified, we accompanied this process with the identification of a roadmap or pathways on how to achieve such visions. Between 2019 and 2020, we conducted a total of 5 workshops in Tallinn, Bangkok, Kigali, Öresund, and Bogota, all linked to an SCI center as part of the Governing Bioeconomy Pathways initiative of SCI. And now we will discuss more in detail the results of 2 workshops that we conducted in Colombia, where I was seconded for a year. Colombia is a mega diverse country and has an immense endowment of natural capital. Therefore, it's not a surprise that policy instruments around bioeconomy can be linked to both biotechnology and biodiversity since the 90s. In the decade of 2010, the government also combined these 2 topics by launching a national policy on biodiversity-based biotechnology. However, the first official reference to the bioeconomy as a term was explicitly made recently in 2018 with the publication of the Green Growth Policy, which identifies bioeconomy as one of the strategies for green growth. And in this case, it defines bioeconomy again around biodiversity, but also highlighting knowledge and innovation. In the last few years, the planning for a bioeconomy policy has been driven by missions, which have included bioeconomy as a new paradigm for Colombia's sustainable development. Within this context, SCI led a workshop together with the National Planning Department of Colombia in November 2019 to discuss a bioeconomy vision at national level. The workshop had 21 experts on bioeconomy, and they were organized in 4 sectoral discussions around agriculture, biopharmaceuticals, bioenergy, and biochemistry. And these sectors were part of a priority list that was previously selected as part of the Green Growth Policy. The exercise at national level showed that, depending on each sector, each of the key features can belong to a different vision. However, most of the characteristics tend to concentrate around the bioresources vision, which aims to generate both economic growth and employment without subordinating the sustainability of the environment. This, of course, will have nuances depending on which sector and which participants are involved in the discussion. But as we can see here, the sector for which the application of biotechnology was the main way of creating value was the pharmaceuticals group. However, the agricultural sector has also envisioned a significant reliance on biotechnology, in particular to bioinputs and biocontrols. A surprising case was the energy sector, as it tends internationally to be more prone to be associated with a biotechnology vision. However, in the case of Colombia, the participants highlighted the need to focus on residual biomass for energy and in ensuring sustainability. So that's why it's positioned within the bioresources vision. From this exercise, what we identified were 4 lessons for governance. The first one is that different visions will coexist at national level, and this will be more challenging the more diverse the country is and the more development issues it still has to sort out. In the particular case of Colombia, we identified that one of the main challenges is on how to balance the use of biodiversity to be a central part of bioeconomy and biodiversity conservation. So most of the narrative right now assumes that because you want to have a sustainable bioeconomy, that the whole process of bioeconomy will be sustainable in itself, and we know from the previous experience with bioenergy that that's not necessarily the case, and that conservation measures need to be very explicit in order to ensure sustainability of the biodiversity. In terms of social challenges, we identified that if the focus of the agricultural sector is on transforming the agricultural sector and to apply biotechnologies, that will most likely result in a loss of employment in primary sectors such as agriculture. And then the question is the country in the capacity to absorb this unemployment? And how this is going to be done, which sectors are going to absorb this unemployment, and how to take this into account when we try to shift from the model we have now towards the bioeconomy. We also identified that there are other social challenges linked to infrastructure needs of roads to move bioresources, but also on energy and water, and that land ownership needs also to be sorted out. Finally, one of the reflections of this process is that if we are facing these differences in visions within the national level, this will only get more complicated when we reach subnational levels. So we decided to explore also how these visions were currently being constructed at subnational levels, and this is what we're discussing now. So let's start with the context. Valle del Cauca is one of the departamentos in Colombia, and it has a large endowment of bioresources and a good diversity of ecosystems. It is also an important agricultural producer in the country and has interesting initiatives that can be linked to the bioeconomy. For example, it already produces 72% of the national production of bioethanol. And Cali, the capital city of Valle del Cauca, is the 3rd city with the largest numbers of research institutes working on bioeconomy-related issues. However, we also know that at least 30% of Valle del Cauca's territory suffers from overutilization for agriculture and livestock activities. We also know that only 42% of rural roads are paved and that most of them are in poor condition, and that there are high levels of poverty and unemployment in the region. Therefore, in spite of these advances, there are still social and environmental challenges to be addressed by the bioeconomy in Valle del Cauca. So we decided to also organize a workshop here. This was done last year. 18 experts were part of this exercise, and they were discussing around 3 sectors, agriculture and agri-industry, and they also chose to discuss around nature tourism. So the results at the subnational level, even when we consider a different set of sectors, were similar to those at national level. We can see that different sectoral visions tend to converge towards the middle area, to the bioresources vision, in which there is a balance between the aims of economic growth and employment and sustainability. In this case, however, we notice that none of the sectors related mainly with the biotechnology vision. Whereas this does not mean that biotechnology and its application was unimportant, what it showed is that biotechnology was considered more of a means of implementation rather than a vision in itself. This convergence towards the bioresources vision, combined with elements of sustainability from the bioecology vision, makes it easier to identify commonalities among different sectors within a specific subnational landscape. And it also, of course, offered lessons for governance, and we identify 4 of these lessons. The first one is that in countries like Colombia, bioeconomy is expected to solve issues not only around economic growth, but also to attend social and environmental development agendas. And bioeconomy is seen as a means to achieve rural development. So it's not only about growth and about innovation. The situation in terms of infrastructure is crucial, as the enabling environment for bioeconomy really depends on this issue. Bioeconomy needs roads to transport bioresources and their products, but also if you want to develop territorial bioeconomy hubs, then you need access to basic services as water and energy, which are not ubiquitous in places like Colombia. The exercise at subnational level also highlighted that governance requires not only of governmental agencies, which need to be responsible for the inclusion of social and environmental sustainability, but that there needs to be leadership from academia, private sector, and civil society. And finally, it also highlighted the need not only to look into visions, but to think about the importance of having a roadmap with priorities in terms of not only objectives, but also which bioresources will be prioritized and why, and who will be included to guide the development of the deployment of bioeconomy. This is all from me, and I hope that we will have a good discussion during the event. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Marcelo Poppe. It's a pleasure to be here with you for the second Biofuel Summit and BBEST 2021. I want to congratulate and thank all the organizers for this wonderful initiative, particularly Cláudia, Luis Augusto, and Renato. We will talk now about the Center for Strategic Studies and Management work in order to drive bioeconomy sustainable development in Brazil. So, among these works, we can mention the studies for the creation of the National Biorenewables Laboratory inside the Brazilian Center for Research in Energy and Materials, which involve also national laboratories on bioscience, nanoscience, and synchrotron light sources within a perspective of technology integration and scale-up. We also worked on the subsidies for the formulation on the Bioeconomy Science, Technology, and Innovation Action Plan and support to the conception and implementation of the BioFuture platform. CGE organized also the international events like the side events South-South and triangular cooperation on the bioeconomy in light of the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Agenda in partnership with the International Network for Bamboo and Rattan in Bar and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation during the COP25 in Madrid. Some of the CGE publications on sustainable bioeconomy for industry, transport, and energy transitions comprise sugarcane-based bioethanol, available in English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese, green chemistry, sustainability of sugarcane bioenergy, second-generation sugarcane bioenergy and biochemicals, bioeconomy in the Americas, and South-South and triangular cooperation on the bioeconomy. From last year, we started, together with the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations, the project Bioeconomy Opportunities and Challenge for Brazil, or the BIO, which goal is to support the implementation of a STI strategy to promote the bioeconomy national development in a global context, comprising also a proposal of a governance model and the construction of an observatory knowledge hub in bioeconomy. In the ODB website, you can find broad information and materials produced by ODB. Here, you can see the layout of the observatory website with its sessions still being developed as resources and knowledge, map of STI strategy capacities, bioeconomics amounts, and intelligence services. Concerning the governance of the Brazilian bioeconomy at the federal level, ODB built a proposal of governance model based on bioeconomy foreign experience and Brazilian governance experience in other domains, which involves a consulting panel, ministerial council and committee, thematic and sectorial chambers, and transitory working groups, taking account the transversality and greatness of the matters covered by the bioeconomy. ODB promotes also workshops and webinars like the Regional Dialogue on Bioeconomy Opportunities and Challenges in Latin America, with expositions by the Vice Minister of Science, Technology and Telecommunications of Costa Rica, by representatives of governments of Uruguay and Brazil, and regional organizations as the United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, ICA, and participation of 120 people. It is welcome to highlight the large convergence of the proposals presented by each participant regarding fundamental aspects of bioeconomy country and regional strategies like decarbonization, circularity, territoriality, knowledge, innovation, cooperation, and big push for sustainability. These issues of the project can be visited in the periodical ODB reviews that remember the activities, finds, reports, and events realized. So in the first semester of 2020, I can underline the workshop Knowledge Hub in Bioeconomy with 160 participants from government, academia, business, and civil society, and the digital repository on Brazilian STI capacities on bioeconomy. During the second semester, my emphasis goes to the ministerial workshop on governance models that gather representatives of 10 ministries and the collaborative consultation among experts on mission-oriented projects for fostering the bioeconomy. The agenda for these years is huge. Our activities started with some 10 meetings of the ODB working group that assemble representatives of academia, STI, and business institutions here point out. Also, the mobilization of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovations network composed by agencies, councils, STI institutes, public companies, social organizations, and research units for, together with other business and civil society, participate at the March of the Bio workshop round to discuss initially challenge and missions, so structural projects, then STI strategies. The methodology chosen was mission-oriented policies that imply to define a challenge, then missions, examining capabilities regarding socio-political, administrative, public policy, scientific, technological, productive, and market aspects to select structuring projects. The societal challenges stated was bioeconomy as a driver of sustainable development and prosperity in Brazil. And the broad mission, accelerate the sustainable use and valorization of biological resources in the economy for the development of new products, process and service, and for the replacement of fossil products. The collective collaboration of some 50 participants in each of the 3 sessions of the workshop stated as first mission, promote the sustainable use of biodiversity, enable value chains and maximizing ecosystem service. The second mission, promote sustainable biomass production for the generation of value-added products based on scientific and technological improvement. And the third mission, develop technologies, process, products, and service for a sustainable industry using biomass and biological and chemical resources from biodiversity. The Assembly indicated also several guidelines applied to all missions. Alignment with SDGs, circular economy, social biodiversity, nature-based solutions, food security, among others. Moreover, the group signified outcomes from the missions as reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, decrease of deforestation, global leadership, for example. Furthermore, the group indicated the main themes comprised within each mission in order to allow the thinking about the actions that should be implemented to accomplish each mission, here illustrated in this real-time graphic story of the last meeting. Next steps should comprehend a careful analysis of the workshop cycle finds and defined methodological guidelines for road mapping and project prioritizing. The first product of this year was our bioeconomy thematic bulletin on the panorama of the scientific production in bioeconomy in Brazil and the world, recently launched, based on a survey did in the Web of Science publications in the last 15 years. As bioeconomy is a recent term, either if the frequency of use is growing fast, we found only less than 1,700 publications. So we choose to enlarge the survey using CGE's big data processing methodology and tools through semantic similarity, reaching a more significant amount of 4,640 publications. Its analysis showed the main keywords employed and allowed to the identification of 15 main thematic clusters among the publications here enumerated in the right side. This study permitted to identify the 10 countries with the highest number of publications shown in this figure, where Brazil appears in 11th place, but growing faster than other countries, reaching the 6th position in recent years. The other figure presents the Brazilian rank of publications by states. These figures show 2 of the 15 thematic clusters analyzed, namely biogas and straw, ranking the countries with more publications on each of these subjects: Poland, United States, Italy, Germany, and China for biogas, Brazil, USA, China, UK, and Denmark for straw. Here we compare the 2 greatest publisher countries, United States of America and Germany, indicating the 10 main keywords found in their publications. 5 of them are the same, but the others are different, showing specific country particularities regarding bioeconomy. The same for Brazil, appearing sugarcane bagasse as a local relevance. We can see down in the left the main partners of the Brazilian publications: USA, Portugal, and UK. And in the right side, the main publisher institutions inside the country: the University of São Paulo and Campinas, but also Embrapa and Cenepem. Conclusively, I remember the target outcomes of ODBio in order to drive a bioeconomy sustainable development in Brazil that comprise mobilization and engagement of actors, systematization of data to support STI policies for economic, social, and environmental development, integration of actions and initiatives, and competitive insertion opportunities in emerging global markets. Thank you very much for your attention. Don't hesitate to contact our team here in the CGE, Barbara, Emily, Daniela, João, and myself, or in the ministry, Bruno, Daniel, or Eliana, for any doubt or collaboration. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organization for inviting me as speaker and also for this virtual conference in these challenging times. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Guillermo Parra Romero, and I have about 30 years of experience working in the energy sector, specifically in the bioenergy sector in the last years. The first part of this presentation is about the bioenergy situation currently in Paraguay. Then we will see the results of a project implemented in Paraguay for the measurement of the sustainability indicators from GBEP. Here we can see the energy mix for production and consumption of energy. You can see the importance of the biomass in both mixes, and the fossil fuels are 100% imported, and Paraguay is a great producer of renewable electricity, and Paraguay is also a net exporter of electricity. So it is we have here an opportunity to replace imported fossil fuels and also to replace unsustainable biomass. We have a long experience using ethanol blended into gasoline. We started more than 20 years ago, and currently we are blending up to 27% of ethanol into gasoline. Ethanol is produced in Paraguay from sugarcane and from corn. The mix shown in the picture corresponds to the production of last year, and as you can see, the ethanol produced is mainly from corn, 82%, and only 18% is produced from sugarcane last year. We have in Paraguay 4 qualities of gasoline with different percentage of ethanol blending, and also we have two fields for flex fuel cars, E85 and hydrated ethanol. In Paraguay, we formulate the gasoline using two qualities of gasolines and ethanol, which allows us to comply with the quality requirements from the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. So ethanol plays an important role in the formulation of gasoline in Paraguay. Here you can see gasoline blending systems with ethanol. It is called hybrid blending systems. As I mentioned earlier, we blend two qualities of gasoline and ethanol in an automatic way at the fuels terminals in the loading station for trucks. Also, we have blending of biofuels for diesel engines in Paraguay. We have two options, fatty acyl methyl ester and pure microemulsion biofuel. We blend 5%, up to 5% of biodiesel into S50 diesel and 0% of biodiesel into S10 diesel. But currently we are blending only 2%, and we are going to increase from 2 up to 5% in the coming years. Okay, this is our project. We can find the result of this project in the websites of GBEP, FIO, and IKI from Germany. It is written in Spanish. The executive summary is also written in English. So you can find the complete work on those websites. We also want to acknowledge the participation of all these institutions and people during the development of this project in different countries in Europe and in Paraguay as well. The project in a hard copy version was presented to several authorities in Paraguay, all the ministries related to energy. We expect that it's going to be used as a reference for the policymakers in Paraguay, in the bioenergy sector. The stakeholder working group that was formed during this project first selected these three key bioenergy pathways: biomass and ethanol from sugarcane and maize, based on the importance of these bioenergy pathways and on the availability of data for the measurement of the indicators. Also, it is important the concept of building capacity for this project, because we want not only to measure the indicators right now for these bioenergy pathways, but also we want to continue the measurement and also add new bioenergy pathway in the future. So we selected 3 centers of excellence, 2 universities and 1 NGO, and also we have a working group with private sector, public sector, and academia. The project included some training from experts from Germany and FAO for people here in Paraguay. We held also a regional workshop at the end of the project with the participation of 12 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean. In the following slides, you can see some pictures from the multi-stakeholder working group, training, and also the regional workshop. So in the following slides, we are going to see the results of the projects in terms of the measurement of the sustainability indicators. Here you can see the environmental indicators selected for ethanol and for biomass. As I mentioned, based on the importance and also on the availability of data for our country. These are the selected indicators for the social pillar, and these are the selected indicators for the economic pillar. The results can be seen here for the environmental indicators for both biomass and also for ethanol from sugarcane and corn or maize. Final recommendations for sugarcane, you can see in this slide that it is a must to improve the efficiency in the sugarcane production and also to apply technology for vinasse concentration and use. And also we need to take into consideration the situation of the sugarcane small producers from the social and economic point of view. And also we need to take a look on the other indicators as well as mentioned here. In terms of numbers, you can see here the result for different environmental indicators for the bioenergy pathways and also for the social and the economic indicators. As I mentioned earlier, you can see the complete results on the GBEP and FAO websites where the project can be downloaded in the PDF format. Finally, these are the recommendations for future monitoring of the indicators in Paraguay. We still can apply the indicators for a new project, the PROESA project, also for biodiesel. We need to improve the collection of data, and we need to keep the multi-stakeholder working group to address all these issues in the future. In the coming months, we have the opportunity to implement the measurement of sustainability indicators in biodiesel. We have already started this work with the producers and with the fuel importers and also the government. And recently, the indicators were used in another project at Petropar by the UNDP. So this is my presentations very quickly related to the current situation of bioenergy in Paraguay and the result of the project regarding the implementation of the sustainability indicators from GBEP in Paraguay. Thank you, and I'm available for questions at these emails and phone number.
Hello, attendees, and thank you to the organizers for allowing me to present here on behalf of the OECD. To those who don't know us, the OECD has right now 37 member countries, and our role is to look at specific problems that come to us from our members, and we have to look at those problems and design some policy recommendations to help with those problems. My part of the house is specifically on industrial biotechnology, synthetic biology, sustainability. And this recommendation I'm going to be discussing today, a recommendation of the Council, is the highest instrument of the OECD. These are still soft law instruments, But this is the highest recommendation, or the recommendation is the highest of the instruments of the Council. And this is the recommendation on assessing the sustainability of bio-based products. And before I get started on it, let me give you a little bit of what I saw in 2011 when I started at the OECD. This particular study by Van Dam and Junginger was really spot on the topic of sustainability and what we were trying to do. And this survey they looked at, they had 473 responses from 25 EU countries and 9 non-EU countries. So this was a major piece of work that looked at, on the left, different ways to measure sustainability and what the opinions were of those attendees. So you can see I've put numbered first, second, and third here. And the one where most people agreed was, unsurprisingly, the minimization of greenhouse gas emissions. But there are many other ways you can measure sustainability, and it's a big issue for us because sustainability, we find now large companies are talking sustainability as a marketing tool, and the danger with that is if you can't measure it, then it can easily lead into greenwashing. So that's been one thing for us, is the whole thing about what is sustainability and how do you measure it, and getting consensus from countries is far from simple. So look at what this council recommendation is. It's a journey. And you see this one here. It was a 3-year process. I joined this at the consultation process, and let me tell you that's a large process where this goes out to publics and comes back for comments. And if I tell you that the heart and soul of this recommendation is 2 pages, that's where the actual recommendations are. The report I had to write on the consultation process was around about 120 pages on about 2 pages of a document. So it's a very complex process, and that's what I mean about going back and trying to get consensus. It's far easier than actually doing the technical work. Sorry, it's far more difficult than doing the technical work, is getting consensus from countries. So every now and again, periodically, we're asked to see if this council recommendation is still relevant and implemented. And if it's not, we can remove it from the books. If it is, we can change and move on depending on what our countries say to us. So let me do a little recap of this council recommendation from 2012. There were 10 specific recommendations on the sustainability of bio-based products. And I've put in here the red bits are really summarizing what each of those were. I won't go through them all for you just now. Number 9, I've highlighted in bold for a very good reason, and I'll come back to that when we talk about implementation. But if you look at number 5 just now, facilitate and develop the adoption and international sustainability indicators for bio-based products. The next slide looks at that. Within that recommendation 5, there were 9 separate recommendations on measuring sustainability, the indicators of sustainability. And you see in there, for example, you see greenhouse gas reduction and some others, direct and indirect land use, all aspects of end of a product life, which is something that we hadn't really considered much before. And then the impacts on human and environmental health. So many of these things we're expecting countries to implement, but we realize that they are very difficult to measure. And the more difficult it is to measure, the more expensive it is for governments and then also for companies who wish to comply with sustainability. So what we did, like I say, this is a routine process, a periodic process to look at first of all, the relevance and more importantly, the implementation of the recommendation. So we designed a questionnaire to look at this, and I decided in this case to use a very heavily modified Likert analysis. The Likert analysis of 1932 was designed to make some sort of quantification of opinions on any particular issue. But I say this is very highly modified from that original analysis. So we're asking the question here about the relevance of this specific overall recommendation here. And if we get an answer from the countries was obsolete, it scores 0. If it's continued relevance, but we need to update, score 1. continued relevance at no further action scores 2. And what, of course, we'd like is more score 2 than anything else, which means that we're still doing the right thing without needing to update. So if then I look at these specific recommendations, and remember there were 10 of them, we asked the same question all the way through because I wanted to see if there was any difference in what people were saying about the overall relevance and then about the specific recommendation relevance. So it's the same thing, obsolete, continued relevance, updates, or continued relevance, no further action. Now, on implementation, it's a different kind of story. You're not going to do the same kind of analysis. And here the thing about these questionnaires is to keep them as simple as possible. So we're saying this particular specific recommendation, has the recommendation been implemented in your country? No. Yes. If no, explain why. If yes, and what are the methods which are used for implementation? Policies, regulations, laws, etc. So if we look first of all at the results from the relevance, I did this as a traffic light system. And like I say, what we wanted was most of this to be green and with some yellow and very little red. And we got responses from 26 countries. And here you see, thankfully, the overall, the vast majority of this is green, which is telling us that most people are saying that the recommendation is still relevant and really doesn't need much in the way of changes. Implementation is a more complex picture, and I've kind of tried to summarize this with a bit of red and a bit of green here. So what I'm saying, first of all, is you see the 4 green circles there. What this means is that 4 countries have said that they have implemented all 10 of these recommendations. Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, United States say they have implemented all of them. And then there were another 6 countries that said they had done no implementation. So this tells you in these questionnaires how wide the spread can be in policy analysis. The biggest surprise, I guess, that came to me from this was South Africa, because that country had a terrific national bioeconomy strategy published, I think, in 2014. And yet they come to us and say that none of the recommendations have been implemented. So one of the things we say now is, well, if you've not implemented and you intend to, how can we help as an organization? How can the OECD help you to do that? Now, there was a bigger division about a couple of definitions. We're not so worried about the bio-based products in its definition, but we expected that there was going to be some difficulty coming about our definition of bioeconomy, because this goes way back to 2009, when the OECD was one of the very first organizations to start to discuss the bioeconomy. So there's greater division here, and the United States said that they would like the member states to perhaps in this next 2-year period to start to look at these updates, but mostly it's about the definition of bioeconomy. So here's what happened in 2009. This was specifically the OECD saying that the bioeconomy is very much about biotechnology and contributions it makes to the economy. At the time, that was difficult for countries to accept, but now especially the United States is making efforts to show the large contribution that biotechnologies make to the overall United States economy, and other countries are doing the same. However, as anybody who's in the bioeconomy business knows, that since that time, this definition of bioeconomy has changed radically. It's become much more general, and it involves a lot of sectors, and there has been some de-emphasis on biotechnology. I'll put a little bit at the bottom here, because something we haven't seen over these years, we haven't seen innovative policy frameworks. We've done a little on this ourselves, but we think there's still a long way to go to get these frameworks into place. Governments might find this quite difficult to accept, because it's very far-reaching for the future. But anyway, I did this little analysis on some of these national bioeconomy strategies, and what you're seeing on the ordinate here is the number of occasions that these keywords are mentioned per page on these national bioeconomy strategies. And I looked on this occasion just at 3 of these, about biotechnology, synthetic biology, and sustainability. Now, there is no surprise that every national bioeconomy strategy you look at, there is an emphasis on sustainability. And indeed, we have said that there is no justification for governments to invest in bioeconomy if it's not about sustainability. But what you can see is a change in time and a schism in the approach to bioeconomy strategies about the roles of biotechnology. Now, synthetic biology is relatively new to the game, and the easiest thing you can say there is that only the United States and the United Kingdom, and to a lesser extent Japan, are emphasizing synthetic biology or engineering biology in their national bioeconomy strategies. Biotechnology is very much a mixed issue, and let me just emphasize here the last two. If we look at the bioeconomy strategy from the European Union of 2012 and then 2018, we see a significant de-emphasis on the word biotechnology in those bioeconomy strategies. And we can see that in some other of these strategies where biotechnology isn't taken to be a central feature of the strategies. So let's have a look at some of these. If we look at France, the bioeconomy strategy is almost as broad as you can imagine. And indeed, this is not uncommon. It involves a large number of these sectors, economic sectors: agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, fisheries. And one of the things you can see in that diagram is that the bioeconomy attempts to join up these different sectors, which effectively have for a long time have sat in their own silos. For example, it would be very unusual for farmers to enter in discussions with the chemical industry. So that's one of the features of bioeconomy, is to try and join up these different sectors. And this is about decreased reliance on fossil. And if you note here in the French one, there's an emphasis on farmers, foresters, and fishermen. So that's quite a long way from simply looking at biotechnologies and their impacts on the economy. So, but look at this from the United Kingdom, and this came in 2018. So this is emphasizing quite strongly biotechnology and synthetic biology research, innovation, and infrastructure within that specific country, and as a means of growing the bioeconomy. So it's and it's also mentioned in there the word sustainable. And this is a message we find difficult to get across, that biotechnologies aren't just about research. They have left the research lab. They are building industries, and they are, in terms of replacing fossil, there is much momentum in biotechnologies for a sustainable future. So on that work, we've just finished this work on the update, if you like, of the council recommendation. So on the right is the kind of updated document, which isn't very changed at all. And on the left is the report which I had to write on the implementation of the strategy and how that occurred. And I've summarized the results from that. And thank you for your time. That's probably all we have time for today. I've just left some of our publications and the things we work on here. We worked, the top left was a book in 2014 on the policy issues around synthetic biology. Bottom on the left is a book from 2018, meeting the policy challenges for a sustainable bioeconomy, which was a much broader publication than simply on synthetic biology. And we've looked at marine biotech, we've looked specifically at bioplastics, and this one, bottom right, we looked at innovation ecosystems and value chains within the bioeconomy. So the work has advanced in several ways over the years. So as I say, thank you for your time.